What is something that your parents did that you swore never to repeat to your own kids? I have to. Making fun of their interests and hobbies. It's why I don't like showing anyone my artwork. But I will do anything to support my kids and encourage them. If they tell me something in confidence, I'm not using that as a topic of conversation with others. Tell my parents anything and everyone knows. My mom just couldn't understand why I was getting mad when she was telling any yahoo at Walmart the whole story of events leading up to my divorce. Both are why my mom wonders why I don't tell her anything. I don't want that for my kids. Well, I had a stepmother who insisted God was punishing my dad for being mean to her while blood was flowing out of his mouth, eyes and nose, then refused to drive him to the hospital. That always seemed like something I'd want to avoid. Any friends I would make, she would tell me I couldn't hang out with them because of X reason. She grounded me for 6 months because I forgot to take out one of the trashes. Not that it mattered. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere anyway. There was one time that I had to stand in a corner in my underwear without heat because she heard a noise that woke her up, and obviously it was me. Once I confessed I could go, I ended up lasting about 18 hours of insisting it wasn't me, ugly crying in the corner till like 3 AM at 8 years old. I had to endure 10 years of that because she kept emptying my dad's bank account every time he got paid so he couldn't afford a divorce lawyer. I hated that woman. What an absolute sack of crap. I was spanked. I thought I'd grow up and spank too because I ended up okay and thought that's how you correct kids. But then as I got older I thought back to how I'd deal with other kids who made me mad or wouldn't listen to me. I hit them. It clicked, this wasn't what I needed to do. Spanking just teaches your children that you don't have the patience to teach them, that it's alright to hit people who don't do what you want them to, and that physical violence is how you express anger. It's terrible and I'm glad it's not something parents do much now. Lecture. My mom could go on for hours for even small misbehaviors. Somehow, it usually looped around to how I didn't keep my room clean, even though the rest of the house was just as much of a mess or worse. When I need to have a stern or serious discussion with my kids, I force myself to make my point in 5 minutes or less. I've even said stuff like, look, this is taking way too long, just don't do disallowed thing again, okay? I also apologize if I yell as soon as I am emotionally able to after an angry outburst. I don't remember mom ever doing that. I received so many lectures that went on for ages while just repeating the same things over and over again. It was so frustrating to hear something said for the 14th time asked if I understood, and even when a yes answer was given the lecture still continued. Use them as leverage against the other parent. Abuse them. Allow them to be abused by a significant other. Abandon them, then return years later once they've grown and try to cause them as much pain as possible for who knows why. I have 4 sons and I genuinely can't imagine doing most of what happened to me to them. Blows my mind. Get loaded in front of them. Growing up in a family of drunks has soured me for the most part to drinking even socially. I do partake occasionally but not often. Deep down I feel alcoholism is in my genetics, so I steer clear unless the occasion is perfect. Judgmental behavior. I want my kids to know that I truly love them because of who they are and not feel like they have to hide certain parts of who they are because they are afraid I won't care about them anymore. I can understand. I've started hiding a lot of things from family because of that only. Also, I only have few people I can count on a hand with whom I can share things. Even then I filter out things I want to with whom, scared of being judged. I'm 32. When I was 14 my dad shot himself, leaving my mum with 4 kids, 14, 12, 3 and 1. 3 years ago my brother hung himself. He was going to be 18. 1 year ago my mum committed suicide while I was heavily pregnant with my girl. I couldn't fly to her funeral. I have 2 kids, a 4-year-old and a 10-month-old. This got longer than I was planning to make it. I've learned never say never in regards to parenting, but I never want to put my kids through what my parents put my siblings and I through. I became my mother's only confidant from a young age, to the point where I was telling her she needed to get a divorce when I was only 14-15. I would never put my hypothetical children in a position where I'm emotionally dependent on them in that way. Have too many pets in the house. I loved them all, but at the highest we had 11 cats and 3 dogs. and it was just kind of embarrassing and I never wanted to bring people over to my house. Your mom is that granny we see in movies. Redo things they've done because it's not the exact way I would have done it. My mom would fold the laundry or make my bed. Drove me nuts and made me feel like why even bother trying? Wake them from a dead sleep on a school night to introduce them to my drunk friends I just came home with because I'm a bartender. Not be affectionate. My mom was very distant and not a physically emotional person with me growing up. I realized that if I have kids I'd want to read to them, hug them, celebrate their accomplishments, overall have them feel comfortable with me to share their thoughts or feelings. When I was little, when my dad was doing anything out in the yard my brother and I would ask if we could help. The answer was always you can help by staying out of the way. My kids are always allowed to help, and so feel they can contribute, grow a sense of self-worth, and an appreciation of group effort. Random beatings because I decided they were thinking something I don't like. Periodic insults to keep them from getting arrogant. You know what you did. Your parents sound terrible. Frickin' bribe them to stay home and not hang out with friends. I became super antisocial and had anxiety when doing almost anything. Kids need to go out and socialize and make mistakes. Glad I'm not alone in parent-induced social anxiety. I feel like I should mention that I love my mother very much. She was a single mother with massive paranoia issues and did the best she could. In the end, I turned out okay and I have overcome the majority of my anxiety. Still, I feel that I've missed out on a lot of childhood moments, which is why I will never do that to my kids, as per the post. I won't scorn them or yell at them when they mess up. I was a really sensitive kid, so when my parents told me to go to heck or called me a freaking moron, it tore at me and distorted my self-image. If I have kids, I can't imagine ever doing to them what my parents did to me. This was my parents' attempt to get me to grow thicker skin. But words hurt. One thing led to another and depression began to take its hold, and at such a young age too. The thought of depression and self-hatred that required therapy sessions to manage terrified me. Thankfully, they took the hint and settled down, and I still keep in touch with them. Physical punishment made me really resent them. My kids are 16, 18, and 20 and they are freaking amazing human beings. And my parents actually bragged to people how we don't use physical punishment, so that feels good. I was not allowed to have any friends or date. Also I had my door taken off at 14 and told I didn't deserve privacy because I slammed it. Guilt tripping, physical and emotional abuse. I asked to hang a sheet up for privacy AMD they said I didn't deserve privacy for slamming my door. I had my first ever panic attack that way and my stepdad told me to stop over exaggerating. My depression and anxiety was always belittled. I was in a mental hospital and my dad and stepmom came to see me and my stepmom just kept telling me what a horrible person I was and that I was just there to get away from her. Also my stepdad would call me a ass and punish me for things my brother did. He also physically shamed me on several occasions and when I told my mom he convinced her I was lying. He told me my feelings didn't matter, but if my kid ever came forward and said something like that about my spouse, I would just not believe them and accuse them of lying. Yikes, my doorknob got removed BC I kept spending too much time in my room instead of wanting to interact with mentally abusive parents. To this day neither my room nor my bathroom door has a knob, there's just an empty hole. Put the other parent first. I remember my mom left me and my cousin at Claire's an hour after closing because she had to make sure her husband was fed and settled. I still feel for that Claire's employee that sat with us after closing. No, my stepdad was not abusive. My mom was just overcompensating because of how unhappy she was when she was with my dad. I will never ever call my future child a WS or a whiny bee because she is on her monthly. I will never judge her boyfriends and call her a W for being kind. I will never fat shame her even if she is underweight or make her lie to get out of the house. 1. Demanding that they choose which parent is right in an argument. 2. Comparing them to their siblings and being unfairly hard on one child compared to the others. 3. Referring to them as my retirement plan. 4. Blaming anyone's mental illness on the child. 5. Claiming things are gifts and then using that to emotionally blackmail the child because you owe me. 6. taking away the child's sense of privacy. If they don't want to talk to me about their private life, they won't have to. I'm just going to insist they know that protection is an option and educate them on adult health. 7. I won't let them fall behind in school. 8. I won't take credit if they suddenly become really good at school and end up at a top 50 university. 9. I won't demand they do a certain job. 10. I won't forget to tell them they're good enough. So in other words, I won't be a narcissist. LOL, I understand these points very well. My mom blamed me for her depression, and when I was young, she actually told me if my parents were to get divorced it's my fault. I am a completely different parent to what I experienced. My parents weren't that bad, but they honestly thought they knew everything and just totally failed to listen. They were also very violent in their punishments. I really believe my kids are here to be better than me. That's my job. I do that by listening to them and letting them make their own choices. Like I always say, I don't care if you end up cleaning toilets, but be the best toilet cleaner you can be and take pride in yourself. The one lesson I have drilled into my kids is that the first step at being good at something is sucking at it. I have worked really hard to give them discipline, the knowledge that they can overcome any challenge if they focus, work hard and regulate themselves. Talking about body issues, dieting and shaming things like stretch marks and cellulite. Took me many years to appreciate my body, got a ton of stretch marks when I was 15 and felt so ashamed. Been on so many diets since then and have tried so many pills. I now have a bad relationship with food, but I've grown so much and I'm trying really hard. I will not do this to my future kids. Argue in front of them. My parents fought a lot around me and I hated it growing and do not want to subject my kids to that. I remember one time when I was about 8 years old, I was in the car with my parents. They were arguing like always, but being trapped in that metal box with both of them screaming back and forth became too much. We stopped at a red light and I unbuckled my seatbelt and got out of the car and started running. My mom, who was in the passenger seat, ran out after me, and after he pulled over the car my dad did as well. They caught up to me and their attitudes completely changed. They promised me they wouldn't fight in front of me again, a promise they broke time and time again until their divorce. I'm hoping I can do a better job of keeping my promise. Kudos for sticking up for yourself. I wish I did something like that instead of enduring it. How from a young age I had perfected the staring out the window and wishing I was anywhere but here. Look. Guilt tripping. My mother is the queen of it. I freaking hated my mother for a long time because of it. Now I tolerate her. My paternal grandfather left my grandmother when my dad and uncle were kids, then refused to pay child support and completely ignored his own sons, whilst my granny had to work extra hours to get food on the table. What's worse is, my paternal grandfather had a son in his second marriage and spoilt him loads. My dad and uncle unsurprisingly have no contact with my paternal grandfather. My dad has been a much better father to me and my sister than his own father was to him. He's a much more decent person than his own father was, and he's done an excellent job of bringing us up, on top of being successful in his field. Even as a young kid he knew what his father was doing was wrong, and swore to be a better father once he had kids. He's done really well for himself. If you haven't said this to him, send it and I'm sure it will make his day. These are the things. Never hit your kid. Never call your kid names. Never berate your child in front of their friends. Never say no when you can say yes. Never not care. I was 17 when I formulated these ideas. I am 65 now with 3 grown sons. They may say I fricked up a few times, but I'll give them the finger if they do, and we'll laugh. I wish I had a parent like that, lol. My dad liked saying, "I'm your father, not your friend," to excuse him being a general butthole. They wouldn't let me buy a video game system. Said it rots the brain. I never understood why watching TV is okay but not gaming. I've played video games ever since I left after high school. My son, daughter and I all enjoy them. It still stings when I think of that NES I wanted so bad back then. At least you're using your brain more while gaming. Don't waste time on it though. Train that super brain with late night advertisements on the latest self-sharpening knife that also doubles as a whip. But that's not all. If you're one of the first 100 callers we'll chuck in another master self-sharpening knife whip. My parents tried to force me to be what they wanted me to be. I was never going to be that person. It bothered me late into my adult life that I was never the person they wanted. All because I wanted different things out of life. It caused me years of depression, anxiety, and apathy. Because of this, I swore I would never force anything upon my children. I swore I would give them every opportunity to be themselves and be a part of whatever activity they wanted to do. For the most part this has worked out. I only struggle with one decision by one child. Part of what my parents imposed on me was forbidding everything. I wanted to play sports, act, and sing. None of those things were allowed. So naturally when my kids wanted to act, play instruments, sing in chorus, and be on sports teams I was overjoyed. The trouble is I have this one very talented football player who doesn't want to play football. This has been very difficult to accept but I have pushed down my own desires. Again, it hasn't been easy. The boy isn't just good, he is all state as a freshman good. He is able to compete against guys in higher leagues good. He won a nice stack of trophies while he was playing. And now he says he doesn't like it. I can see him playing football to earn a free college degree. I can even see him having the potential to be a professional. And it's not me making it up. He is for real. But he doesn't want to play. My dream would be to be in his shoes. But he simply hates everything that surrounds football. So I stuff down the disappointment of not getting to watch my son play football at a high level and replace it with pride that he can stand up for himself and say what he wants. He is facing tremendous peer pressure to continue playing. Grown men are calling him stupid. His mother is offering him money to play, but he wants to do other things. And I'm not going to be the one who forces him to do something else. If I respect his wishes and let him decide his own life, he may lead himself back to football. Whether he does or does not will not make a difference to me now. The hardest thing as a parent is letting go. I have 4 wonderful kids and letting them be themselves has already led them to be happier than I ever was. Take it. All my respect and admiration. It's yours now. If I ever have a kid, I would want them to always know how much I love them. I want to be affectionate with them, and I want them to know that they are good enough. I love my parents, but they weren't the most affectionate with me or told me that they loved me. They would always compare me to others. I could never do anything right. I hated them and I loved them. Now I just love them. I'm glad they've softened up. Because I said so. I always have a reason why I ask them to do something. If they ask why, I'll explain. I'll explain my reason. My reasons for my reason. Various other factors I considered. I can go on for a while. They know this. The other day I asked my 7-year-old to do something. She said why. I thought about it for a second. I asked, is because I said so a good enough reason? She thought about it for a second, said, yeah, for about 3 seconds. I felt like I nailed parenting. I try to do this and generally follow it. But my son is 3 and sometimes he asks why and there is no reason for it. Duck walks across street in front of us. Why he did that, I don't freaking know. I've never hit my kid and never will. My parents believed in spankings. I don't. There's a better way to get through to your kids. My dad always said not to have children and the only way to be successful was to be a doctor, lawyer or engineer. My children are a joy. I may not be successful but I am happy. It sounds like your dad had regrets. I doubt I'll have children, but I'm just gonna name a few things. 1. Telling them if they're a girl, that they should have children because every woman needs to have children. 2. Saying that their boyfriend/girlfriend is using them because I don't like them when they haven't done anything bad. 3. Telling them if they get physically shamed by a trusted person, that they should just talk it out with them like my parents did to me when I told them I was physically shamed by a trusted male friend and one of my friends helped him do it. 4. Telling them that cutting themselves is playing with their wrists. 5. Yelling at them when they don't come to me first for help with emotional things. 6. Implying that they're a W because they slept over a boy's house. My parents did this when they knew I slept downstairs with the rest of the girls, while the boys were upstairs, with the boy's mom and a motion sensor camera that had an aerial view of the room and sent the mother a notification to her phone. Every morning she checked the camera's footage when there was movement. Side note, I hate my parents. I'm so sorry. Obsess over their food intake and their body size from the age of 9. I really hope I can be a help in my daughter's healthy relationship with food and body image when she grows up, not the cause for an eating disorder. There is a wonderful book titled Mothers, Daughters, and Body Image by Dr. Hilary McBride. I just finished it and it gave me so much hope and helpful suggestions for a potential future daughter. Getting home haircuts. I dreaded elementary school picture day because I knew I'd come out looking like some West Point grad. I'll take my business to a barber who will listen and do a good job for them to get that confidence boost. Capri Suns. Dude. Growing up my mother never let us have them. Claimed they were terribly expensive and worse for you health-wise than soda. Once I started grocery shopping as an adult and discovered that as far as juice goes, they really aren't that expensive, and B, they are no worse than other juice. Yeah, my kids get Capri Suns, and my mom rolls her eyes. This is so wholesome compared to some of the other answers. 90% of my childhood 1. Use religion to cure depression. Forget about said depression. Ask what there is to be depressed about. 2. Invalidate boundaries. 3. Hit on their friends, them, or talk about anyone in their age range like that. 4. Punishment before understanding the reality of the situation. 5. Let people call her mini-me or compare her to anyone. 6. Let her dive into malnutrition, anorexia, and atrophy. 7. Lie about options if she gets pregnant to force her into the situation that would make me look good to the neighbors. 8. Guilt trip looking like a kicked puppy when they gave a perfectly good reason not to do the thing. 9. Call her a cat in heat for comforting a crying partner in front of me. 10. Literally track her location and interrogate as to activities at each location. 11. Send multiple departments of cops across state lines to find her even if she's told each one to back off and no contact. 12. Harass best friend and only remaining friend about kidnapping her till she hates her. Use because I said so or use superiority towards them. Yes, I will discipline them when necessary, but respect is earned, not given. I will speak to them as I would wish to be spoken to. Yep, respect is super important. I was taught as a kid that no matter how far I go I will always and forever be beneath my parents. We were never equals, and therefore in every single discussion I had with them I was automatically wrong because I was inferior to them. Kids are people too. Just because they're younger and small doesn't make them any less of a person. Having kids. There are plenty of people on this planet who should not have had children, and my parents definitely shouldn't have had them. I am not mentally stable enough for kids because of my mum's behavior towards me, so I've made the decision not to have any. The cycle ends with me. I've got crippling mental illnesses. I'm not having any kids because I don't want to pass them on. My brother didn't inherit any of the mental issues from our family, so I'll be glad to be a proud uncle someday. To clarify, really intense OCD. I promised myself to actually teach my kids where babies came from. I personally never got the talk growing up and was physically shamed from the ages of 9 to 10 by the same person because I didn't know any better and it felt good. I didn't actually know how to pronounce vagina until I was 14 and didn't know that the dong actually went inside the T until I was almost 16. My boyfriend at the time had to tell me. I didn't know girls could have an orgasm via clitoris until I was 16 and it happened to me. So yeah, adult education. My parents would yell at me whenever helping me with my math homework, leading me to feel stupid for not understanding it. Then when I hit 6th grade, my mom compared me to my cousin who was in advanced classes and basically said, "Why can't you be like her?" Made me feel worthless and I tried to kill myself, self-harmed for a few years. Will not make that same mistake and make my kids feel that way if I ever have any. Threatening. Don't get me wrong, my parents are great people, but the way they calm down my younger sibling is by saying things like "go to bed" or "I'm going to have to spank your butt" or "if you don't stop crying you won't get TV tomorrow," and it just doesn't work. I learned in a child care class that negative reinforcement is always worse than positive reinforcement, and it just makes me sad that they scare her into listening. My mum always says how she'll take away the Xbox or phone act, and TBH I just don't care at this point. They are both the only ways of escape for me, music and games, and I sound like such a horrible person saying it, but I think it makes my mental health worse. Insisting that all drugs, including alcohol, are inherently evil. I grew up in a very conservative Christian home. I'm still a Christian, but I am not really conservative at all anymore. Instead of demonizing drugs, and freaking too, for that matter, I'm going to inform them of the risks and ask they not go overboard. I don't have kids yet, but I'm hoping to have the kind of relationship with them that they'd feel comfortable telling me stuff like that. I'd much rather my child say, "Hey, I've been really wanting to try alcohol," than have to pick them up from the emergency room after they've had their stomach pumped. I know that's kind of an extreme example, but that's the kind of relationship I want as a future parent. Sometimes I feel like I have to put on an act around my parents because I love them to death, but if they knew half the stuff I've done they'd flip out. For example, I dropped acid for the first time the other day, and it was amazing. Euphoria, introspection, the whole 9 yards. But if I told my parents, they'd react the exact same way as if I told them I had tried black tar H. Heck, they'd probably have that same reaction if I told them I've smoked herb. My parents are amazing in a lot of ways and I'm lucky to have them. But this is one area I definitely plan on changing once I become a parent. Emotional, verbal, and physical abuse. I can't remember my childhood anymore because I've pretty much repressed those horrible memories. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.